Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Tough Talking Thursdays. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at a very big question. Before we get to the question, let me introduce my panelists. We have joining us from the city of brotherly love, our chief political analyst, Mr. Wilmot Weti Kune. Mr. Kune, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Also joining us from Philadelphia is FOL political analyst, Mr. Mohammed Sharif, a product of Waplo Institute, all the way from Kalipo, Kanwiken. Mr. Sharif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Dennis, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Last and definitely not the least is my own man from Metro Atlanta, Georgia. In fact, he's the vice president for our community here, Mr. Robert Gligbin Gagwa Jr. Robert, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to be talking about a very important question tonight. The collaborating political party. Our topic tonight is the collaborating political party CPP dead? You may agree with me that there has been a lot of trouble in the CPP. People all around agree that the CPP has imploded. But is it something that going to last just a little while and they come back to life, or is it dead politically? I have my panelists here, and if you have not done so already, please share the video and let us discuss the CPP. Let me start with you, Mr. Robert Gligbin Gagwa. We all see the implosion of the CPP. But the question is the CPP dead? But before we look at it, let's walk through what has been going on in the CPP. We saw that there has been a lot of fuss over the alleged modification or altering of their foundational document. That's the framework document. And that has led to members and even the leaders of the CPP throwing the kitchen sinks at one another. So this leaves us to think that maybe this is the end of the CPP or not. So the events of the CPP, what is it exactly? Before we come to the big question if they are dead or not, what do you make of everything that is happening in the CPP as of today?
Well, Dennis I cannot even find the adjective to describe what's going on other than it's sad. I mean, you got to think about the fact that this is the biggest opposition political party to the CDC, the ruling party, and whenever you have an opposition as big as the CPP. With four political parties, you have to look at them as a government in waiting. And all of the things that they want to replace, lack of leadership, corruption, change, whatever that might mean to those folks, the question we have to ask ourselves, have they exhibited that which they want to replace? So it becomes a bigger problem for Liberia and Liberians, and a bigger problem for Liberians who truly want change in their country, and Liberians who may not be happy with what they see from this George Weah administration. Are we just going to replace George Weah? Is the goal, the objective to replace him? The question then is, with what? And I think that's the question we have to answer. And that's the question the CPP will have to ponder on as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kune. What's your reaction to what I term as the implosion of the CPP?
Well, for me, I'm not really surprised. I'm not surprised. Those of us that know very little bit of history, we've seen this scenario before. You go back to the 1997 coalition effort, where almost every civilian politician based in Monrovia thought that they could form a coalition against Mr. Charles Taylor. I think the lesson that that was not lying from that failure. The failure of that effort is that whenever you bring people together for the sole purpose of removing another person from power or preventing another person from power, that is not an organizing strategy. Just like today, during the 97 coalition effort, the goal was to just prevent Mr. Taylor from the Liberian presidency. As we have today, the goal is to remove Mr. Weah or to make sure that Mr. Weah is not re-elected. So if a coalition come together for the sole purpose of power, then what we're seeing here is not surprising. As I said the other day, this is not an argument on the vision of the CPP. This is not a philosophical argument. This is not a policy argument. Everything that is happening in the CPP is one person trying to establish a favorable position to stand so that it becomes the head of this effort to seize political power. This is why it's leading to the implosion. It's solely who inherits power. This is not about a contrary vision of the country that the opposition is selling, that other Liberians will look at and say, you know what, this is the opposition, this is the vision, and let us contrast it with what we have now. So it's just a naked fight for power. So I'm not surprised by it.
Mr. Sharif, on top of that same question, what I want to ask you is this something unique to the CPP, or this is how Liberian political parties operate? You are on mute, Mr. Sharif.
Sorry. Dennis, what I was saying is that's an excellent question. But if you would indulge me for a second, I just want to take this moment to say shout out to our loyal viewers who have, again, week in and week out, followed us, view our program. It's one of the most followed programs right now. And, if you don't mind me calling some names out here, Miss Tavina Cole, I believe that's her name, Tavina Cole, Howard Mesgar, Sam Wallow, Kelebo Gongolo, Bengali Trawali, and Mohammed Sise, people who, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people, of viewers, of followers that, I won't be able to name all of you, but, thank you for following this show. Thank you for, your feedback. Even if you disagree with us, you gave us, these useful feedback that help us, delve into these issues. Mr. Cesar actually is in Maryland County. It's in Harper, Maryland County, where he followed our show. So now to your question, Dennis, the CPP, this is coalition politics is nothing new to Liberian history. You go back to 1951, where the partisans of Detour's United People's Party coalesced around the Reformation Party because Mr. Tupman, the incumbent president, had suppressed Mr. Detour's United People's Party and prevent the United People's Party through bogus legal maneuvers from registering as a political party in the 1951 election. And therefore, supported Mr. Detour and his supporters coalesced around the Reformation Party. Even after Mr. Detour and his supporters had converged together with the Reformation Party, Mr. Tupman would not allow them to contest the 1951 election. Come to 1955, there was another coalition where former President Edwin Barkley of the Independent Tory Party formed a coalition with the Reformation Party. And this was one of the most hotly contested and negative elections in Liberian history. So coalition politics, and by coalition, I do not mean demographic, regional, or interest group coalition. I mean political coalition. So this is nothing new to Liberian history. So fast forward to what we have now as the CPP is nothing new. But what is new is the precipitous decline of the CPP without getting to the goal line. So the objective, as Mr. Coonan mentioned correctly, was, has been to me, the defeat of George Weah. And that is the problem. So what else is there that these guys wanted to do? What else is there that the CPP wanted to do? So there's little that we can take out of what the CPP wanted to do. These guys are not putting forth an ideology. They're not putting forth a grand plan for developing the Liberian nation state. We are at a crossroad right now because the CPP, you mentioned implosion. This is beyond implosion at this point. The CPP, as we know it, is dead. The CPP is never going to come back together. And I think Mr. Cummings recognized that. And this is the reason why in Mr. Cummings' press conference, he was very feisty. To me, he hasn't been that way before, but he was very feisty. And it was not just denials, it was, throwing jabs at his colleagues in the CPP. So, yes, this is, to me, the end of this coalition as we know it.
And we'll come to that big question. At the core of what's going on in the CPP now is the alleged authoring of the CPP framework document by Mr. Alexander Cummings. A committee was set up, and that committee comprised people, the accusers and the accused, put together to investigate the accuser. And so, but here is what is many Liberians are not clear on. What exactly was changed? We saw that the storyline of the ANC being accused was nothing changed. It moved from nothing changed to harmless changes and cosmetic change, right? So what I'm going to do here is looking at the CPP framework document and the report of the committee to investigate this. What did you learn? So I'm going to put a chart on the board that I want all of us and I want our viewers to join into and tell me, and I'm going to list things on the screen. Here I call this the CPP framework document Wahala matrix. So according to the report, the election of candidates was part of their findings, right? That in the CPP document, we have what is called the election of candidates, which turned to selection. So this was one of their findings. If I can find that in the document quickly, was election and the way they would choose the candidates. That's number one. The report alleged that there were structural changes between the amended copy from the lawyers, and so those were the changes that they talk about. Now, the endorsement of candidates and not the election. So number one, we talk about the election of candidates or the endorsement. That's one of the changes that were allegedly made by Mr. Cummings. And then another change was using alliance. Alliance was used throughout, but then there was a change there. And then the definition of good state of health. Also, the December 21 consensus date, according to the allegation or the report, the consensus date supposed to be December 21. Mr. Cummings had moved it to September and November deadlines. So on the screen there, what I want you to do is on the election of candidates, was this change made? Yes or no? Because I really have not been able to find out was the change made, and if yes, was it a cosmetic or harmless change, or was it substantial? That's the question. Again, Mr. Cooney, you've gone through the document. To your knowledge, what do you know was the change made on the document? And to you, was that change actually made based on what you have studied so far? If your answer is yes, is that change considered a harmless change, or a substantial one. And let me backtrack that. There can be harmless changes. There can be cosmetic changes to a document, and there can be substantial changes. So, Mr. Cummings, based on what you know so far,
I went through the document, and one of the major sticking point that will be in the document is the portion that you just read: selection of candidates and or election of candidate. Those are two different things. To select candidate is different from election.
it say endorsement. Listen to this. It say the governance structure of the original FA under National Assembly talks about the endorsement of candidates and not election of candidate as is placed in the amended and the filed copies of the framework document.
Exactly. So endorsement of candidates is different from the election of candidates. And that is one of the major points. So that is a material change. Endorsement and election are not the same. So the induction presupposes that maybe there will be some arrangement where the leaders of the CPP will come and say, okay, this is our candidate. Election of candidate carries another meaning. And it's not only the election of candidates that is substantial. You also talk about delegates. Whether it is you will have delegates to assemble or delegates will not assemble. Those are very substantial. So if one was not in one of the document and it appears in the other document, then that's substantial. Because the election means that candidates will openly vie for the candidacy of the CPP. And delegates will have to assemble to pick those candidates. But endorsement carry another meaning. So the change in those words, in my opinion, suggests substantial change in the document. It's not a harmless change. It's not
Cosmetic.
Cosmetic. It's not phraseology. Election different from endorsement.
Right. And Mr. Kunin, before you continue, they put this in the finding, right? I hope I'm able to put it on the screen for everyone to see, which again was a little confusing to me. If you are not able to see that, let me know. Oh, sorry about that. Are you able to read that?
No, it's too small for my eye, for the paper eye.
All right. So, but what that document, what that said is that two things. And let me read it for you. I don't know whether they are trying to confuse all of us here. It says, the governance structure of the original FA under National Assembly 6.1.1 talks about the endorsement of candidates and not election of candidates has placed in the amended and filed copies of the framework document. So I'm thinking to myself, why are you even mentioning the original one? We are talking about amended and filed version. Well, let me go to Robert. Robert, what do you know to be the changes that were made, and to you, were they substantial or cosmetic? Your mic. Yeah, good. You're good.
Well, I gotta be honest with you. I have not perused the entire document. I've read pieces here and there. But just looking at the words election and endorsement, and I think you just raised a great point, a salient point, which is, while we talking about the the original document, when we should be focused on the amended documents and what was given by the lawyers or whatever tweak they made to it. But I think the question that I would like to ask a CPP executive is, what was the process when Talia Ure ran? Was she endorsed? Was she handpicked, or was it done through a democratic process? what was the procedure when Abraham Darius Dillon ran on the CPP ticket? Was it an endorsement? Was it an election, or was it a democratic process? Look, but it's not what I think or what I say though. I think the bigger concern that I've had then is the language that I've heard from some of the biggest voices within the CPP with regards to this document. I mean, if you listen to some of these guys, I've heard words like forgery. I've heard words like criminal. These are languages that reflects a legal argument. Because if the tweak or if whatever that was altered to this document amounts to a criminal offense, and you have a party that wants to replace a regime that they've described as a corrupt regime, then it's been almost a week and a half. It's been almost 2 weeks, right? Why have we not heard the CPP taking the alleged accuser or alleged criminal, in this case, Alice Cummings, to court? Because Alice Cummings, if you listen to his press conference, he's been very adamant. He's not a criminal. He didn't create any criminal act. And so if these are the languages that they are using, I heard the last time some top voices within the CPP were willing to accept a public apology and calling on Alice Cummings to publicly take responsibility. So is that enough? Is that enough? Are you okay with continuing a collaboration with a man who is alleged to be a criminal, and this criminal could possibly replace another criminal in George Weah, alleged criminal in George Weah? What are we doing here? What are we doing? And
so Robert, what are you hearing from the ANC? Is the ANC saying no change was done, or we made a change, but it was a small change? What are you hearing from Mr. Cummings?
I think the argument initially was that the document was not altered. That was
right.
One. Those who had accused Alice Cummings of altering the document did not tell us specifically what was altered within the document. What was released by this committee still isn't very clear as to what was altered. But if you just looked at the some of the things that were mentioned, I don't think these were changes made that amount to some, malicious intent to that will amount to anything criminal. I think they were procedural changes, if I may. But again, if you ask me for my opinion on what I think this is, I think this was a conspiracy to, take away Alice Cummings' trump card as this Coca-Cola executive who became a millionaire not by a government job, not by stealing the Liberian people money, and he is described as Mr. Clean Hands. And everyone else within the CPP, if you looked at people like Bernard Urey, if you looked at people like Joseph Barker, all these guys, got rich by the job that they occupy in government. And so this was an attempt, I believe, to say, hey, you can no longer argue that you are Mr. Clean Hands. If you looked at the argument mostly made by the opposition, folks who do not support Alice Cummings, this is what they've been pushing. And so it confuses me. Was this an attempt to correct the changes made? Was it an attempt to point out a criminal and persecute this guy for the criminal act? Or was it just to say, hey, you two are a criminal now?
Right, and we're not getting from the ANC whether yes we made it. Look at this one, which I would think is substantial. Was this? What they're saying is it is that the amended copy has December 1, 2021, Wednesday, has the date to reach a consensus in selecting both the presidential and vice presidential ticket. And in the event no consensus is reached, the nomination process must be determined at the primaries. While the file copy of the framework 11.4 talks about consensus dates of September 30th and November 2021. So what I've not been able to hear clearly, Did the ANC make that change? Or is the ANC saying we made a change, but it is not big enough? Mr. Sharif, are you hearing exactly what the ANC response is?
No, and I think that's the issue. The issue is the ANC leader, Mr. Alexander Cummins, has not been able to get in front of this issue to tell the Liberian people what he did, what he knows, and when did he know what he knows. So this is the issue, and so it leaves a lot of it leaves a lot to be desired on Mr. Cummins's part. The only time, one of the only times that you saw Mr. Cummins come out forcefully was his last press conference, but it's already water under the bridge. So he hasn't been able to tell the Liberian people exactly what he did, what he didn't, or what he didn't do. Now, take for example, the area of you must be in good health, or terminal medical uh, condition, as the original document stipulated. That is not cosmetic to say good health. I mean, that's a big change. Looking at the one of the candidates involved. So our speculation is that if you were looking at Mr. Boyka, that would seem to disadvantage Mr. Boyka quite a bit, to say the least. So these aren't mere cosmetic changes. They are big changes when you talk about a coalition. And why wasn't this discussed, or why wasn't there a sort of a dialogue with other leaders of the collaborating political parties? And so it still is an issue in my view. And I said it on our last show. I am disappointed in Mr. Cummins because of the fact that he has consistently sent a message of change. He has always said, and Anthony on one of his show spoke about the CPP mantra. What is the CPP mantra? Mr. Cummins has always said that if you're going to do the same thing over and over again, and expect to get a different result, you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect to get the same result. Well, what he's doing now is the same thing over and over and again. So you're trying to replace a very corrupt regime. So the panacea, or the remedy to that, is not to replace that with another corrupt regime. That is not what the Liberian people need at this time. So Dennis, they are not either side. So Mr. Cummins has the burden of proof. He has not done so. I know they're going to come out as, his supporters are going to come after me saying, hey, but what are you talking? The accusers are the ones who are supposed to prove a point. No, he is supposed to now prove to the Liberian people. He was the chairman of the CPP. He has to prove to the Liberian people what he knows. When did he know what he knows? And that is the point. That is what he needs to do at this time.
Right. And Mr. Sharif, what is stopping either the current chairman of the CPP, who is accusing Mr. Cummins, or the political leader of the ANC, who is being accused of laying the three documents side by side so that we make the determination? Why are they passing these things? Why is it that nobody is coming and say, here is the copy, here is the amended copy, here is the copy of our file, and both are the same? Does that speak to the CPP not keeping proper documentation? Because it looks like nobody knows where the copies are.
Yes and yes. Yes and yes, because that speaks to a larger issue than is in the Liberian society. I mean, Liberian politics, it's very sloppy. I mean, these guys, you look at them as, you have a senator, a sitting senator, and you have a businessman in Benana Yuri, one of the most successful businessmen in Liberia. You have a sitting senator, You have a former vice president who served for 12 years. And these guys somehow cannot come up with, something like you said, side by side to tell the Liberian people exactly what it is. And so, however, that being said, Mr. Cummings has the biggest burden at this time to prove to the Liberian people that what he said, he means what he said, and he's going to talk the talk and walk the walk. In my view, he hasn't done that.
Thank you. That brings us to the biggest question here that we will have to answer tonight. So with all this, and I mean, they are fighting. The fight is on, and it looks like it's not getting better. Looking at what is currently happening in the CPP, and their objective is to make President Weah a one-term president. Can we safely say that is the CPP dead? And let me start with Mr. Cooney.
Again, Dennis, let me go back to my 1997 example, because this situation, closely mirrors the 1997 example. I want to believe in the end, there will still be something called CPP. But will it be the way it was intended? No. If you go by the lesson of 1997, when all of these politicians, Monroe base, came together and they could not get their coalition, indeed, Cletus Watterson was still the coalition candidate. He participated in the election in the name of the coalition at the time. But many of the constituent people, parties that are supposed to be part of that coalition to give it political weight, they also left and they entered the race individually. Mr. Gabriel Bacchus Matthews entered the race. Dr. Toba Nantipote entered the race, and so many others. So even though Cletus was there as a coalition candidate, but it was just in name. The coalition was merely in name. I envision a scenario where at the end of this process, there will still be something called a CPP, but it will not have the original strength, the original composition, and the kind of power that it was intended to be. But I want to make 2 points, two larger points. The fact that it has taken people that are perceived to be competent, people that are perceived to be qualified, taking them almost 3 years, 3 years to come with a document of cooperation should be concerning for all Liberians. These people are supposed to be our quote unquote the most educated, the best qualified. They have all the treasure of experiences, both public and private. And it's taking them up since 2019. It should be concerning.
No, Mr. Kone, they came up with the document. That document was filed to the NEC, so the document was complete.
No, it's not. But the fact that we are talking about it, the fact that there are charges and counter charges of somebody tampering with it, it does not represent the product that that particular group of people is supposed to put out. That's the point.
No, but even the constitution of the country, we're still talking about it. Doesn't mean that it is not complete.
Yeah, but it's not nobody accusing other people of criminally altering the constitution. This is different. This is accusation and counter accusation of criminal doing and all of these things. I'm saying, for example, when Mr. Cummings in the business world have taken that time to come up with an agreement between another company, with all of that. So it's concerning with Mr. Barker with his experience. All of this experience with being toting. Is that the kind of product we will get from somebody with that kind of experience? Mr. Benena Ure. So that's the concern. Then the final point I want to make. Look, our people say whatever you do, sometimes can catch up with you. And this is the position where Mr. Cummings is. Mr. Cummings accommodated, rationalized every undemocratic move that was in the CPP once it was not affecting him personally. throughout the history of the CPP has been coronation of candidates. There was never a democratic process, like my brother said, to select somebody or to elect somebody to represent the CPP. We are at this junction now where we are because the coronation that Mr. Cummings supported from the beginning of the CPP, that coronation is catching up to him. It appears instead of having an assembly of delegates for delegates to select, to elect the candidates, other people feel so strongly that it should be a coronation. All of the framework documenting Mayu came to light when there was this big discussion on, how do you call it, black voting. That when somebody say, oh, a little they think that to the neck is not what we're talking about. So even if the CPP survive this, they still have the issue of black voting to contend with. And that will spell danger for them. And I'm not saying it will break them down totally, but what we will see maybe will be a frame of it, but it will not be the CPP as we know it. The languages, the accusation, it's so much. Look, the other day I was reading Facebook, the Secretary General of the Unity Party, we can have our disagreement, but to go after a young and talented a lady like Mariah Yakula on Facebook in those kind of words, and I'm imagining under what scenario where these people come together. If you look at the rhetoric on all sides, the way they talk to one another, the way they badmouth each other, we can have our disagreement, but I don't think those kind of negative dialogue should be among people who say they're working together. So in the end, yes, there will be some frame that will call themselves CPP, but I don't see this original group emerging, you know, as the CPP that, you know, the Liberian people were looking up to.
And talking about the bad muffin and the language, and it is at the acquiescence of the political leaders. That's scary. Mr. Sharif, do you believe the CPP as we know it is it dead or not?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that the CPP, as we know it, a conglomeration of four political institutions, is dead. So you're not going to have Mr. Cummins, you know, back into the fold. I don't think, or there is going to be a power struggle between Mr. Cummins, Mr. Boakai, Mr. Ure. So you're going to have that dynamic play out. You're also going to have some sort of insurrection within the Liberty Party. We haven't even talked about the Liberty Party and what is going on within that organization. So the CPP arrangement, it is amazing. I mentioned that you know, coalition politics, you know, is nothing new to Liberia. However, the manner in which, and Mr. Cummings talked about the 1997, the collapse of the 1997 coalition. And so, you know, it's nothing new, but what is new to us is this level of, you know, unreasonableness among the leadership. And yes, the vitriol, it's very toxic. And I don't think that you can put all of this stuff back in the bottle.
And if you tell me that the CPP is dead, Mr. Kuni, let me start with you. What is the cause of death? What caused all this?
It's power. It's power. This was not a well thought out process of trying to create a credible alternative for the Liberian people. This was based on the fact that Mr. President is bad. We need to get him out. That's what it was based on. And if we get him out, we will then have power and distribute jobs. You saw the original document that we talked about here. You know how they were dividing jobs, who's supposed to get job. That is not a vision that brings people together. So that would be the collapse. Everything we see in this framework document is, if it is not exclusionary to other people, it is prohibitive to other people. There is no democratic space within a framework that will encourage other people who may have desires to come forward, not only for the presidency. The CPP will not just produce candidates for the presidency. They got legislative candidates, and they got all of these exclusions. So it's like the document was designed or is designed to achieve a specific objective of someone leading it, instead of creating a forum where Liberians will put themselves in competition so that the best can emerge.
The cream rise to the top.
Exactly. It's not why, they already defined their cream. This is like the Iraq war. George Bush already wanted to go to war. He's looking for the intelligence to support war. Whereas the intelligence supposed to lead to war, but the decision for war is already made, and now we are looking for the intelligence that will support the war. So this is why you see all of these infighting, and I don't know how they really going to come out of it. You say one person is a criminal, the other person is a human rights violator. So the Abyss people now we're going to take them because Georgia is so bad. So we'll take an agent of death, we'll take a forger, we'll take and then the final point I want to make is to just point to a double standard that many people are guilty of, including you. And I'm going to indict you directly, Mr. Moderator, my brother here, Mohammed. Every time there is this cry of Georgia being quiet, Georgia can't speak. Issue happening in the country, Georgia that bobo, Georgia can't talk, the president can't talk. Here is a major issue that is in the opposition CPP. Where is this experienced 42-year-old? What leadership?
And we coming to that. We coming to that issue.
So you see, that's the double standard of the intelligentsia elite. When I mention it, you say it's bad. If that Georgia is supposed to speak on every matter, anytime we find a dead body, Georgia is supposed to speak. But a major political institution is in tatters, and those who are supposed to be competent, those who know governance, those who are articulate, those who know all the book, those who know leadership, they can't even step to the front to quiet the firestorm that is taking place. Is that leadership? Is that competence? Is that experience? That when your house is in order, when fight occur among family, you sit back and you direct him from behind to continue the flame so that it consumes everybody? Is that leadership? And the Liberian people are watching. And this is why we feel confident.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kone. I know where you're going with that one.
You don't want to hear the first round victory, so that would be the first round. That would be the first round victory.
Mr. Sharif.
Yes.
What is responsible for this sudden death?
Dennis,
is dead. What caused the death?
Dennis, that's an excellent question. There's a reason why there hasn't been a United States of Africa, right? So when the concept of the United States of Africa was propounded by Pan-Africanists, men like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Mali's Modibo Keita, or Sekou Touré of Guinea, there were those who fought against it simply because of greed. It's all greed. It's all about power. And in Africa, there's always this correlation between power and wealth, so that the more power you have, the wealthier you tend to be. So these guys are busy trying to amass more power for themselves. And so greed is the essential reason why this coalition will collapse. What is the reason why Mr. Cummins, a very successful Fortune 500 leader, a leader in America's private sector, why would Mr. Cummins stoop so low to engage in some of the infringements that he's been accused of, and which I have no doubt that these things happen. Why would he do that? the simple answer is greed. These guys, all of them are. And perhaps this is, one of the few areas that I will agree with Mr. Coney. Guys are fighting to replace George Weah. The fight to replace Mr. Weah, right now, it doesn't look like a fight to replace a corrupt regime. The fight is not only to replace this regime, the fight is to bring in a new regime that is equally as corrupt. So this is not the change that the Liberian people are looking for.
Thank you. Mr. Gagwa, my question is the CPP dead? If your answer is yes, what's the cause of death? If no, why not?
Well, my apologies for moving back and forth.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joined us, this is Focus on Liberia on Tough Talking Thursday, where we discuss the question and answer the question, is the CPP dead? And this is one thing, and welcome Mr. Ansuni Sie, the man who eats, sleep, and drinks politics. He's the host of the Hour of Politics. Mr. Sie, is the CPP dead?
Dennis, there are reasons to believe that the CPP is dead. I think Mr. Conin and Mr. Sharif talked about previous collaboration or coalition in Liberia. And when Mr. Conin articulated that great piece of history, especially with Cleto Watterson, though he became the candidate some way, somehow, but many of the constituent members pulled out. So that was a political death of the collaboration or the coalition at the time. So the coalition could not achieve what it was meant to achieve. In politics, that is death. That is sudden death, for that matter. So when you come to the CPP, we are hearing all these accusations today because the race now has narrowed to 2 persons. And if you follow the trend, first it was Black voting. The reason for the Black voting was the Unity Party has been so afraid that if they go to a competitive process with Alice Cummings will use his financial power to secure a victory. And so they have to find a strategy. And that first attempt in that strategy was to introduce Black voting that would guarantee them, certain blocks within the CPP to put them to victory. That was defeated. So what do? Now they want to muddy the water. And the ANC actually did not do itself well in the entire process. And they have not been able to explain what happened. Now, some people are saying, no, the accuser should explain. No, the accuser can only accuse. A committee was set up. The committee made a report. The committee said changes were made. Initially, sorry for taking you back, but this is important. The ANC official position was that nothing, nada, zero was changed. But what are we hearing now? According to their own lawyer, Baped, that's his last name, he said, well, those were harmless changes. So it moved from no change to change, except that those changes were harmless. And now we're listening, again, we heard something that cosmetic, and they added the word change. So the ANC, if those individuals that spoke in favor of the ANC, this is the ANC that is not changing its original position that nothing changed. The ANC even released a flyer to really make it clear that they did not change anything, and they put it in simple Liberian English, that nothing changed. They lie on coming, they lie on the ANC, nothing changed. So for that very ANC, its surrogates, its supporters, people who in their corner, to now be telling us, oh, they were changing, except that they were harmless, they were cosmetics. This is ANC trying to tell us we changed something. And that is shameful. And let me put another piece to it. And as you know, I've been trying to read the document extensively because I want to come out clear. The ANC Secretary General Aloshoto, when he was making the presentation, if you read the document, it has 4 columns. Column 1 is the regional. Colon 2 is the amended. Colon 3 is the file. And then the fourth column has the investigator's note where they found the necessary changes. In his presentation, Aloshoto did not mention, he didn't care to counter those indictments, those findings that were in the report. And I'm there wondering, why is he leaving out the meat? These are the things they accuse him of. And the reason of having a press conference is to debunk, to clarify, refute what you said did not happen. But he chose deliberately not to talk about it. It is obvious that it was calculated. So then is to come to your question. Is the CPP dead? Yes, the CPP is politically dead. Of recent, we heard from some big mouths in the CPP that, well, the best thing we can do is let everybody go their way. And you train me, I told these people, oh, the best way is adopt a resolution, go into the first round individually, whoever makes it to the second round becomes your candidate. Mr. Coonan talked about the languages that are coming from both sides. These languages are so toxic that these people cannot come together to reconcile. Yes, the CPP is there politically.
Thank you. And if you are watching us, we have the alleged content change on the election of candidates as opposed to endorsement. Was that change made? If yes, was it cosmetic or harmless, or was it substantial? The use of alliance, was it made by ANC? If yes, cosmetic or substantial? The definition of good health and also the consensus deadline, was that change made? If your answer is yes, was it cosmetic, harmless, or was it substantial? Let me go back to my man, Robert Glickman Gagwa Jr. Robert, is the CPP dead?
Well, before I get to this question, I'm burning out yet because three things I want to address. One is I want to disagree with Mr. Sharif a little bit on the burden of proof. Yes, I concur that I don't think Alice Cummings and ANC have done themselves justice by not being explicit with regards to what happened and when it happened. But look, when you listen to the languages, like I said earlier, that is coming from the CPP and those who do not support Alice Cummings, falls right in line with criminality. And so I think the challenge should go the other way. If an investigation was done and findings were put out, and there are evidences beyond a reasonable doubt that changes were made that amount to criminal offense, then I challenge the CPP, and you put the burden of proof back on them. They were the one who accused. Some of the things that they're accusing him for, based on the languages used, they have been defined. ANC and Cummings have been defined about the fact that he's none of those things. So if you are serious about fighting corruption, and if you're serious about replacing a regime that has been described as corrupt and criminal, then take Alice Cummings to court. Persecute Alice Cummings. This is what you should mean if given power, that you will fight corruption.
Robert, before you continue, the official document, that is the official allegation against Mr. Cummings, is in the committee report. That report did not say he did a criminal act, right? The report laid out, this is what you changed. So let's take the criminal act is by those talking heads. So let's disregard that for a moment and concentrate on the report, which is the official document alleging that Mr. Cummings did change the framework document.
If none of this amounted to a criminal offense.
We lost him there again. Now, we talk about the cause of death. Here is what I have. First of all, from the very beginning, we analyze this document and say, well, if your objective is simply to remove someone, it becomes difficult. Let's look at the structure. The CPP is structured in such a way that you have this rotating presidency. And if a political party is headed by the chairman, so if you have these parties coming together, the rotation should be among the chairpersons and not the political leaders. The political leaders are rivals, right? All they do is for power. So when you put them together and make them to rotate, of course they're going to fight for power. Two, they have this thing called rotating chairmanship and rotating headquarters. So if you are the chairperson, your office become the headquarters of the CPP. And second, all your officials become the official of the CPP. So if Mr. Comey is chairman, Aloysius Stowe is secretary, becomes the secretary. I don't know who the financial person is, but I will assume that the financial person of the ANC becomes the financial person of the CPP. So if that group leaves power, first of all, you will see some form of collusion there. If you are rotating, if you said ANC is chairperson, Unity Party is vice chair, LP is secretary, for instance, that will show some form of transparency and some form of balance. So we don't have that. But Robert is back, so let me allow Robert to continue. Robert, go ahead.
Please, and I apologize, but look, so this if the changes that were made did not amount to all of this wahala and all of this politics that's going on, then why is it that the CPP could not handle this thing in-house? In-house. I mean, you have to look at the politics at play here. Number one. Number two, I want to go back to what Mr. Sharif spoke about, the true imparted, and what we are looking at with the CPP. This is a manifestation of lack of true political institutions in our country. And this is something that I've been saying from the get-go. This is the reason why some of us are not part of any of the political clubs in Liberia. Because we are more interested in being a part of a true political institution that is centered around ideas, ideologies, and not individuals. When you looked at all of these folks and you looked at what they have done going back into history, it has always been the foundation of individuals. Look at what happened. Where has the NPP been? Since Charles to the left.
All right. So in all this, I'll play. My next question is, where is the elderly statement, Joseph N. Boakai, in all this? Many think that Mr. Boakai is the adult in the room. He's the elderly statement. So what is his position? I'll play you a clip at the beginning of the press conference. Listen to Honorable Boakai on his thought on the alleged change.
Well, let me just say it here. What is the difficulty in four people having a document to say we have some forms, let us look at it to make sure that all of us are on board? What's the difficulty in that? All of us should be satisfied with the document we have. Why should one person defer on that? If their comment were the one who were dissatisfied, we would still have to meet to review the document to make sure that we are all satisfied. And again, we can't be where every time we decide on something, then we go back, you renege on it, because by doing so, it means that there is some inconsistency, and we cannot continue this way. We agree on something. The four of us agree. The meeting we had, there was nobody, no journalist, nobody to cover, and we all agreed on something.
That was Mr. Joseph N. Boakai during the press conference where Mr. Ure laid the charges against Mr. Cummings. Mr. Cooney, can you paraphrase what you heard in that tape?
And Dennis, may I correct something? Mr. Ure's accusation was a written letter sometime back that there was some nefarious act being carried on the framework document that was submitted at NEC, and he went on to say someone at NEC had hinted him.
Right.
So this meeting that Boakai spoke, when they decided to have a press conference, Mr. Cummings had walked out. So after Mr. Cummings had left, they decided to have a press conference, And there is Mr. Bwaka saying, why, when we agree on something, there's one person all of the time. And you see that the three persons, they are like in agreement against Mr. Cummings. All right. For me, what I see to be true is what I try to tell. And I don't care about politicians because they will never change my life. They will never change my life. I have the power to change my life. So I do not care about them. Because they are saying they care about the country, then show it in every way possible. So the point I'm making is there is Bwaka. I mean, if you look at the language alone, the way he acting, he's not a leader. He's a follower. He has no clue what's going on. It's like he's just waiting for the palm butter to just waste on his rice so he can start eating. It's unfortunate. So I just wanted to make that, clarity there, Dennis.
Thank you. Mr. Kunin, where is Bwaka in all this wahala?
And that's the most amazing question. This is the old man that has been portrayed as stable, somebody of great leadership and everything. And you go back to the point I made earlier. This old man has made many excuses for why he didn't do certain things in life. Even when he was dismissed, I was serving as president. When he became vice president, I was in the garage. I was parked. This is the first time now we are seeing him full court center administering an organization with his experience, with his quote-unquote leadership and everything. Then this organization is imploding right before his eyes. So where is this leadership that everybody is talking about? Where is this diplomacy that everybody is talking about? When he cannot even rein in his own surrogates. And this is the fundamental question the Liberian people will ask. Do we dislike George Weah so much for us to replace him with somebody who their own allies call a criminal, who their own allies call an agent of death, who their own allies call somebody that has gotten illegal wealth from government job? So these are really, really serious questions. And where is the leadership? Where is the articulation? And this is why sometimes the double standard kind of offends me. Because anybody fall down on Broad Street, people, they are demanding we should address the nation. We should say something. But this old man has remained quiet, pushing the button behind the scene, directing the flame, throwing the flame, and then he's presented publicly as being clean. But the fact of the matter is, a major Liberian political organization is disintegrating right under his watch. Is this a dress rehearsal for how our country will implode under him? And instead of taking leadership, he will sit back and send his minions like Mo Ali to attack a very young and intelligent young woman like Mariah Yakula because you disagree? Is this how this leadership we see in our country? I feel sorry for our country. I feel sorry for the country. If these are the people that would be the alternative for the country, and I can easily see why the Liberian people say, look, if this why you're bringing, we better stick with our president George Weah. And this is why we are confident of that one-round victory that you don't want to hear about. And
it's that I don't want to hear about. I just want to.
Let me just make a final point. And let the CPP by chance accept the suggestion from Anthony that look, since we are unable to form a united ticket, let's go individually. Anthony, there will be no second round for them to there will be no second round for them to come together again. There will be, in fact, the first round victory will even be made much more easier than even predicted.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, Mr. Boakai is the elders in the room. Right now in my village, they say the elder cannot be under the palm wine tree, and the palm wine tapping tool get missing. It seems to me that while Mr. Boakai is sitting there, the palm wine tapping tool is missing. Where is Mr. Boakai? What is he saying? Is he also accusing, like in that press conference, he was not clear whether he agreed with Mr. Ure that Mr. Cummings actually changed the document? Or is he sitting back so that others do his dirty work? Or is he part of it? Or is he saying, wait and see what is he saying and where is the leadership here? Where
Look,
is
Dennis,
Mr. Walker?
look, Dennis, I have to once again agree with Mr. Coney on this one right here, because clearly there is no leadership exhibited by what we will call the adult in the room. It was Dr. Martin Luther King who said the ultimate measure of a man is not only in time of comfort, but in time of challenges and controversy. So this is Mr. Boyka's moment. So what is he doing? He is allowing other people to do his bidding, to do his fighting. This is not leadership. A true leader has to, in the words of Colin Powell, communicate vision and promise. Right now, Mr. Boyka is not exhibiting the kind of leadership that Liberia needs. And so if you're going to if you're going to communicate to the Liberian people that you're going to be different than the current administration, you have to show this why in the opposition. But Mr. Boakai has, as he mentioned in the last during the last campaign, Mr. Boakai said when asked a question, Mr. Boakai said he was a parked race car. So this race car was parked for 12 years. Now, this is the moment that this race car needs to get back on the track to show to the Liberian people that when he gets into the executive mansion, that he is not only their president, but he is their healer in chief, that he is their listener in chief, that he is their village chief. Dennis, you and I, spent some time in small towns and villages in the Southeast. We know that the elders in the room are the ones who make peace in time of crisis, right? So in this time of crisis within the CPP, it looks like there is no elder in the room. And that is very, very concerning when it comes to the Liberian opposition CPP.
Mr. C, we see the what is going on in the CPP. Most of you say that it means the CPP is dead. But from what I see, is this a reflection? We talk about the documentary and everything else that is going on. Is it a reflection on the chairperson of the CPP, because it looked like she's not able to manage the group well? All this trouble started on or happened under her watch. Is it a reflection on Mr. Cummings, the accused, who from his corporate background has not been able to exemplify what we know has the way people do things in the corporate world? For instance, they are carrying flying sheet around and signing on it to a flying sheet of paper, and you can put that paper anywhere. Okay, he's making what may be cosmetic changes, harmless changes. He's submitting document and probably didn't even keep a copy or share the copy of what he submitted to his colleagues. And then here is Mr. Boakai, who is the or should be the adult in the room, just sitting there. And it looks to me that this is the way they operate all along. If you are chairperson, you have everybody working for you. The rest of the people, they go on their farms and wait their turn to become chairperson. Is this a reflection on the chairperson of the CPP, the political leader of the ANC, Mr. Boakai, or the CPP as a whole?
Dennis, the answer is very simple. All of the above. Yes, on the current chairperson of the CPP, Nyomli. And she is playing to her advantage. And she's playing to her benefactors witch or witches. And that's what is happening. So she is not showing leadership. Now, if someone raised an accusing finger against another constituent member concerning your constitution that was filed, for which you are now a legal political union in Liberia, something that you people are working on, collaboratively, so to speak, because they all had their lawyers representing them when they were doing the amendment and the back and forth resolutions were signed here and there. If one of your members say, hey, something nefarious has happened to the document, and where did that question come from, that concern come from NEG? Really? Is that NEG responsibility now to be telling individual members, and then the individual member now taking that as an accusation against another? She did not arrest that. So yes, she could have called this Uri, say, hey, what are you talking about? Let us review the document inwardly. And that could be resolved rather, but she did not do it because it was in her interest. The politics here is Nyomli wants to be vice president. So she's playing. Nyomli is being controlled by DeLong. DeLong has pledged allegiance to Joseph Yamambwaka. Many times he sat before his feet, he bowed down to him like the three Hebrew boys worshiping something. So then it's all of their boss. Now let me come to Alexander Benedict Cummings. You have been accused, and this is my frustration with the ANC, and I'll continue to make the point, and that is the truth. Mr. Cummings, you filed a document. Ure is saying there are changes being done. You want to tell me you don't have a copy of the document you filed with NEG? You want to tell me you don't have a copy of the amended version? Why don't you release the two copies to the public? That these are the copies, the one the lawyers amended and the one I filed. Read for yourself and see whether there are changes. Dennis, how is that so difficult? Even the very youngly, you said something very significant earlier, that, hey, why do you even have to constitute a committee? If the question is that the filed version is different from the amended version, publish the two. Liberians will decide for themselves. But as we speak, then it's like a war. These leaders have not been able to pull these two documents and release it to the Liberian people to decide. What does that tell you? And it speaks more to Cummings. You are from a result-driven, terrain. You have succeeded in a brutal corporate environment where we use Google Doc that have track changes and all that. And you have been accused in this manner, and you don't have copies of what you filed to release it to the Liberian people. And up to now, all we're hearing is nothing changed, and now cosmetics, and now harmless. Really? ANC, seriously, this is what you want to tell us. So to answer your question, then in other ways, the other panel this time, yes, all of the above. It speaks to how they are not providing leadership. This is their constitution.
Right.
This is their constitution. They said there are three copies. Release the three copies and let the Liberian people decide. This is simple. They didn't need a committee to do that.
Mr. Gakwa, what's going on in the CPP? Is it a reflection on the CPP chairperson, a reflection of Cummings, a reflection on Joseph Nyumambwaka, or the CPP as a whole?
I think it's all of the above. You can't exclude one from the other. After all of these guys are have interest in becoming something in Liberia, if not president, vice president. So it's all of the above. But my frustration with Alex Cummings goes way back to the ANC decision to have even formed part of this collaboration to begin with. I've always said that in order for us, if any leader who is serious about radical changes must be able to make radical decisions. Alex Cummings in 2017 stood on that stage and he said, and I think some of us took him seriously when he said, you can't continue to do the same thing over and over and somehow expect a different result. You can, everyone who he is now in bed with, he once described as folks who could not be trusted with the leadership of Liberia. some of those folks he described as criminal. And it shocked me to the core when I heard that ANC was going in a collaboration with the very folks he Cummings had described all of these names, characters that did not align with his, folks who had ideas that he didn't believe in. And you know, it had me thinking, at what cost was he willing to you know, become president? At what detriment? Are you so desperate to become president that you mean to tell me you have to collaborate with folks you think you might need to become president, even if the ideas does not align with yours? And so that's shocking. But look at what's happening now. Why is it that Joseph Boakai? Look at Joseph Boakai. The Unity Party folks have said, George, we don't speak to the Liberian people. In critical times, we haven't heard from the president during the pandemic as much as we expected him to have been out there speaking to the Liberian people, right? Look at what's happening within the CPP right now. Why is it that Joseph Boakai, a man who could possibly lead the CPP ticket, a man who could possibly become the next president of Liberia, you look at the crisis that's happening, why has he not spoken out? I mean, it's embarrassing what's going on. And so I think we have to ask ourselves some serious questions. And at this point, I personally don't give a damn what anyone thinks about me. Is the CPP ready for leadership in Liberia? I think it's no brainer. The answer is absolutely no. I don't trust Alice Cummings at this point. He hasn't exhibited the kind of leadership, the kind of decisions, the kind of hard, strong decisions that we expect a true change maker to make. Joseph Boakai hasn't exhibited the kind of leadership with the current crisis that they're dealing with within the CPP. And damn sure, Senator Lawrence has been a big failure when it comes to how she's handled this whole.
All right. I don't think we're going to have Robert again. But
Yeah,
thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is our
with
focus on Liberia. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to go into our comments and also open our phone lines. The number is scrolling down there, 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403. But let's take a short commercial break, and we're going to be right back. Welcome back here. Focus on Liberia. This is Tough Talking Thursday. Our topic today is the CPP dead? And we have some comments here. Christopher Tobasi and Unrepentant Sedition say the CPP is dead. That is expected. Yakba Wulo Zakba, the intelligentsia elites are imploding uncontrollably, Kony. I doubt if the current decline or disagreement will be resolved. Jimmy Ismail, CPP is lacking of leadership. You have to reel your attack dogs in if your success is predicated upon your ability to cooperate and harmonize. It is questionable whether CPP has the preeminence to survive as a political party. Matilda Stevens, only Liberians you can see on Facebook every day talking and not caring development in Mama Liberia. So the Senegalese are carrying development from Mama Liberia. Samuel Sakaman, the document was altered. Cummings and the ANC made a mistake. Choosing different words to justify their mistake only exposes them more. Let them conduct an internal review and make reforms. They are wrong. Mayfi Deco, Robert, please answer the question and forget about what others said about this document. Are the changes cosmetics? Jackie Sayer, if those that declare that they were hurt cannot show you where they were hurt, in other words, by those changes, what good is their accusation? Samuel Sakama, structural changes, cosmetic changes, harmless changes, minor changes, legally, all of those constitute alteration. Whether or not they benefit anybody is another argument. Let's see a few more comments. There are a lot here. Arthur Freeman, Musa Belete is the center of all the controversies within the CPP because he is the chief strategist and advisor to Cummins. Belete is not sincere to Cummins because his intention is to destroy the CPP, help George Weah to be re-elected, and not Cummins. Presently, Musa Belete and Ellis Cummins are together in Ghana as we speak. People can really accuse. Valentine Precious Cummins joined to look for change after he called some people out about the 30,000. Instead of looking at it that Cummins means good, people trying to bring him down. This is sad. Jackie again, the framework is a contract, so show us the damages that were incurred from what you term changes. Let me get a few more comments. There are a lot here. Sam Wallow, VP Bwaka is correct to not put or diminish himself to the role of referee in what has become a war of words between members of his coalition. It would have been a losing situation that would have only resulted in him being accused of playing favoritism. Spencer Brown, this is where you come to discuss critical issues concerning our country. Thanks to FOL. Gentlemen, those are the few of the comments. What's your take? Let me start with Mr. Cooney.
Well, as always, I'm always indebted to our viewers who give us great comments, both positive and some of them very critical that help us to improve our participation on the network. If you listen to some of the comments, they are exactly what we've been saying here. One time we also said on this network that the come let change president strategy has never worked for our country. Some of us, we've seen the change of 5 presidents in Liberia. It has always been come let change president. No one is willing to make the kind of investment that would change the society, the kind of education, the kind of awareness, let alone creating a vision that will rally the Liberian people. The call has always been, let's change president, let's change president. You change president, the system remains. So in this kind of situation, what is occurring in the CPP is what Liberians have seen all along. I think the only little difference here is that many people now have developed some kind of critical analysis of not only national issues, but individuals that are putting themselves forward for leadership. Again, the purpose of the opposition is to be a contrast, is to be that alternative, is to be that government in waiting. If you see everything the CPP is doing, it's just everything that they, like my brother said, accusing the government. Even where people are convicted in court of law, they don't believe it. They politicize it. Even where they accuse one another of violating their own law, they think nobody should be penalized for that. But they should still go in political kumbaya. I asked you the other day, if you truly believe that Alex Cummings forged these documents, committed all of these horrible crimes, what are you willing to do? We just sweep it under the rug and go on? Then what is the change? What is this big talk about your impunity? What is this big talk about somebody not respecting rules when your very rules are violated and you can't do anything about it? So this is why the Liberian people will not see any contrast in the CPP besides a group of people that are just angry and anxious to regain the power that they lost. And if that's the only rallying cry to the Liberian people, many Liberians will not fall for that.
Thank you. Let me squeeze a few more comments in, and then we'll take one call here. Wisdom, kindness, the fundamental mistake they all made was not to put in place a proper democratic process where candidates can be vetted and elected. Bouaka has always felt that he should be ushered in without going out and convincing people that he can do the job. Samuel Galibon, unfortunately, we are all looking for solutions to the problems of Liberia by way of political arguments, which will never happen, considering what we have done against God and ourselves as a nation. Righteousness exalts a nation, the nation's people. It is time to turn to God. And Joseph Cummins Jr. said the executive committee needs to call the lawyers. It is a process, Mr. C.A. You cannot a confidential document without authorization. Foreign guys say, what's wrong with changing a president in a democracy? Let me take our first caller here, Darling Warwood. Darling Warwood, you are live. What you got for us?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I just want to say this quick. This is we are 2.0. This is exactly how we are into power. People who could not win the presidency all by themselves, they use George Weah to parachute themselves to the executive mansion and to get hold of our economy. This is exactly what we are seeing with Bernard Ure and Joe Bouaka. Ure knows that he cannot come close to winning the presidency. So what his game plan? Push Bouaka, support Bouaka, campaign for Bouaka. The guy has forgotten that he's even in the race. He's a member of the political party who's supposed to be contesting the presidency. But he has forgotten that Bouaka is the only thing that comes out of his mouth. Bouaka is his breakfast, lunch, and dinner. While the game plan is to use Bouaka to get hold of our economy again. So people should watch out.
Right.
Bouaka does not want to be president. Bouaka is sick and weak and tired. He doesn't want to be president. This is all Bernard Ure is doing. This is his game plan. This is his strategy of getting hold of our economy again. This guy sold SIM card to oil Liberia for $65 United States dollars, whereas SIM card was sold to other places around Africa for $1 or for free. He looted America for 4 years and got away with it. And Mr. Weah is listening. Establish a war record. If you don't establish a war record, Liberia will not know peace. Because the very people who perpetrated so many crimes against Liberian people, both war and economic crimes, they are still free and parading the street of Monrovia. That's why you see so much trouble in Liberia today. Establish a war record. Bouaka is innocent. Bouaka doesn't want to be president. This is all Bernard Ure is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take the next caller. It's soon to be overseas. Sam Sakama. Sam, you are live.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for the great analysis. I just want to add a couple of points. And the first point would be on the alteration. I think the ANC made a mistake. We've gotten the documents. We've looked at them. Sometimes, you comment on Facebook and people try to paint you with your political persuasion, but their starting principle was that nothing was changed. And we all started with that. But then to come up with these harmless changes, stuff around cosmetic, I think all of that don't hold water, given that they have lawyers and those lawyers look at those documents. For me, I think it's the comments I look at the head of the party, but being a legal person, I kind of look at the ANC lawyers, what they did with those documents. No lawyer should do what they did. I think Cummins needs to sit with his people and review their internal processes and make reforms. Whether or not the document was changed, yes, the documents were altered. Motive, benefits, you can always argue that. Once you have a motive, it's meant to benefit someone. And from what we can see, especially on our health principle, I think the benefit is the Cummins. I agree with Mohammed on the burden, which is our second point. I think Liberians sort of get the burden of proof wrong. You talk to a Liberian and say, it's on the accuser. When you go to law school, the burden of proof is not a static principle. It is dynamic. It can be turned around. You know, we all know in sexual violence cases, when you abuse a woman in America here, you are the one who will be telling the court, I didn't do it. This is my proof. It's not that woman to say, oh, I wasn't raped. This is my proof. So I leave that there. But I look at celebrities and politicians. For example, you guys are in the States. When the Trump people ran with the Obama birth certificate thing, it was President Obama's team that produced the birth certificate to kill that narrative. It didn't go to court and say, oh, you know, the burden is on Trump, you'll bring the certificate. It didn't go that way. So Mr. Collins has been sold as a clean man. And the stain on his character will affect him more. So I thought his people could come out. In this process, the burden is not to him because his character is on the line. He's the one who has to come out and say, look, this is me, I'm a clean man, and I didn't do this. Just on my last point there, on the way forward, I think the CPP is not dead. I like the old man with all the history. We learned a lot from the history. But also when you look at coalitions in Liberia, they changing. So when you look at 85, you look at what happened in 2005 with Bronski and we are coming together, all that happening. When you look at We Are 3.0 or whatever they want to call it, 2017, that's hell. There's a lot of learning. I think coalitions are holding now. So it's not going to be like 85.
Thank you.
Marcus speaks tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me get my last caller here. Caller, your name and where you calling from. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead. Your name and where you calling from.
This is Christian. I'm calling you from Phoenix, Arizona.
Christian, you are live. Thanks for calling.
All this are playing out here. I want to say it's playing out to be very bad how the opposition are treating Arizona Comey. There's nothing in here we have to be discussing. There's nothing. And this is what they call themselves so-called educated people, but I think a lot of wisdom. If they put a go for primary, Joseph Walker had all the people there that you think that he had. What's stopping Joseph Walker to go for primary and then selecting Joseph Walker to be the head? Is that how you do? This is how your own government, you select somebody? You don't let the people to choose? You don't let people to choose? You just go and tell the person by hands, let's go. Are you all here today? This is 4 different political parties. Alexander Comey has all right to say he don't want to be vice president. Who stopped Alexander Comey right for saying he don't want to be vice president? I want to be president. You got Bernard Ure, you got Joseph Nimo Waka from different parties, Bernard Ure from different parties, you got Alexander Comey from different parties. Different parties, you got the people who just passed away, Bronski only going to pass away, then who's going to be by now and then, maybe that different thing we're talking. I don't know if Bronski are going to be the one going to go, or that Joseph Walker going to go. Who are going to go, we don't know. Or they're going to hate Pete Bronski, or what they're going to do. Go to the primary. You guys are diplomatic people. Why are you guys? So you're for Mama George, we have for no reason, and you guys are not even alternatives. It's a shame that you cannot go for a common primary and let your leader. We're waiting for you. Go to the primary and let your leader. It's the process. It's the constitution. So you bypassing the constitution to go and take the man from your house and pour tea from here and say that he's the leader? No. And it's not coming there right. And what I want to say on the change of the document here is, if you say something change, one specific that change that affect you, what affect you? What is the effect that it has on you? You cannot show what it changed. Somebody say you see, but you say what the person see. You can't show the thing the person see. Show what the person see and how does that affect you? And what is the solution the way forward?
Thank you.
You guys are for political parties, so you're gonna die, gonna be there, and you're killing over primary. It's a shame, though. It's a shame. Like people should be watching. It's a shame.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to Robert Gagwa Jr. Robert, what's your feedback on your colors?
Well, I think that I think that the last caller just spoke about Alex Cummings, right, and 4 political parties and Charles Bronski. I was thinking the other day, I said, and a friend of mine, I was talking about the lack of political institutions in Liberia, right, where you automatically have a stand-up bearer, right? So we knew way back before ANC had its formality convention that Alex Cummings was the stand-up bearer. Okay, you knew the stand-up bearer for Unity Party is Joseph Walker and the political leaders, right? and it's not supposed to be that way. If you have a party where you have individuals around that is focused on ideology, I think you know the political leader of a party once a primary process is over and the nominee or the presumptive nominee of that party is elected, not selected, or not chosen based on you know if who formed the party or whatever the case is. And so it all goes back to the lack of true political institutions in Liberia. And I keep mentioning this because this has continued to be the downfall of of some of Liberia's issues. The very way you see these guys running their political clubs in Liberia, if and once elected, it's the same way they run our country. Okay, I think my brother Austin talked about his disappointment in Alice Cummings with regards to how the documents what was distributed. You mean to tell me that this group of folks who wants to change this country, are distributing important documents on WhatsApp, on Zoom? Are you kidding me? And so look, all of this shocks me. And come 2023, we have got to make a decision, Dennis. Have CDC, CPP shown enough to be trusted when it comes to replacing everything that's wrong with the current administration? Leadership, corruption, I mean, every single thing that's wrong with this government. Have they exhibited enough of that with this collaboration to be trusted to take office? Or should we expect something different?
All right.
Then I don't think we're going to allow Robert Gagwa. Robert Gagwa need to get a computer. If he really wants to do this, being on the phone, it has a disadvantage. Then if I may jump in here quickly, right? Let me start with Alex Cummings, and I'll go with Vice President Joseph Yimambwaka. I continue to say the ANC made a mistake to have gone into a collaboration with individuals. It knew from day one.
But and let me stop you there, because this is what I keep hearing. That ANC made a mistake. ANC. Are we saying that it's so clean that he can join? Because these are the same people you're going to go to vote, right? So what is the mistake about ANC going into a political collaboration with other Liberians, with other political parties?
Then the last time I checked, the population of Liberia is around 5 million. All right. The last time I checked, the political parties in Liberia are more than 20. You chose the ones that are known for corruption. You chose the individuals who are known with questionable characters. Really? Let me give it to you, Dennis.
Yeah, because Alex Cummings came in this in 2017. He did not, win any seat, right? So he's coming from a position of disadvantage. So he needs those people that have numbers to really say, like, whether he's too good to be part of them, or he has the political capital, or he has the numbers. I don't get it when people say that, but go ahead.
And Dennis, I will say this to you, and you will get it today. In the corporate world, if you want to form a merger, or if you want to grow the strength of your company, what do? You buy other companies out. You don't go buy companies that don't have a good reputation. My airline I work for, Southwest, bought AirTran. AirTran has a good reputation. Southwest had a good reputation all along. So they went for that company. So it became an added value. What I'm saying is that Alex Cummings can tell me if he wants to grow a company or want to do a merger or form a collaboration with another company. He's not going to go to a company that is doing drugs. No, he's not going to do that.
That's an overstatement.
Well, Dennis, this is politics. I'm talking politics. I'm not talking like a boy. I'm talking like a man. So here's the thing, Dennis. These individuals, Mr. Cummings wanted to grow his political capital, if he wanted to increase his strength, we have another rainbow coalition that is completely unknown. There are other political parties that are practically unknown. He could buy bring those political parties. He could even put his own coalition together. What is wrong with doing that? Why can't he do that? So let me leave Alice Cummings. At 17, it was a mistake to have gone in this political merger, alliance with these individuals. And that is why these are the individuals that are coming after him, trying to tin his record because he did not keep a watchful eyes of these individuals. He forgot that he was dealing with, political vampires. And so they are dealing with him, and he's responsible for that. Going to Omen Yimabwaka, you asked a question earlier that whether or not Joseph Yimabwaka is a leader. No, Joseph Yimabwaka is not a leader. Now, Mo Ali, who is the current Secretary General of Unity Party, when he carried on that bad behavior, when he later admitted that he did and said to the young girl, don't get me into a situation that I can't handle, the Unity Party suspend him. The Unity Party even asked him to resign. This guy remains Unity Party Secretary General. Did Joseph Yimabwaka say anything about that? No, he did not. And he will never. And it is the same behavior that is coming to the CPP. This is a major accusation against a constituent member. And Joseph Yimabwaka is just sitting there. He just allowed things to go. Mr. Kone could not have put it better. He's good at making excuses all of the time. I was parked. And then he took a loan, but he can't even take a loan to pay his dues. And now he is taking, I have to show you that quickly and conclude here, Dennis. This is Joseph Yimabwaka taking over. Those of you watching low below, Joseph Yimabwaka becomes the political leader of the collaborating political parties. When was the last time you heard that? When Benny Nayiri was there, he was not political leader of the collaborating political parties. When Cummings took over, he was not political leader of the collaborating political parties. According to their framework, it is called chairperson. But Unity Party, the experienced party, just like Yimabwaka said, he saw this thing. They are calling him a political leader of the CPP. He accepts it. This is patronage leadership style that is in this old man. He sits back, he's waiting for people to just bring it to him, and he wants to have it. And what will he do with it? Absolutely nothing. We are in trouble.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joining us, this is Focus on Libra on Tough Talking Thursday, and you have Mr. Anthony C.A. talking tough. So, gentlemen, let's conclude this. What is the way forward? What do you see with the CPP? Because it looks to me, from what you are saying, if the CPP is dead, and we also saw that these political leaders in this party, they have managed enough to outdo everybody. They are the only rooster to crow in their political parties. There is no challenge. They become automatic or lifetime standard bearer. So there is no challenge whatsoever. So they are the only ones. The CPP has also managed to control the opposition political bloc, that other political parties has almost ceded the ground to them. So if the CPP implodes, what do we see? Who government is performing so poorly. I mean, how worse can the country go? So what do we see now? Is we are second term. Is that what you were saying? Let's discuss the future. Where do we go from here? Let me start with Mr. Sharif.
Yes, Dennis. So I don't agree that Mr. Alexander Cummings came to the CPP from a position of strength. Mr. Cummings made a strategic decision to coalesce around this arrangement called the CPP for a reason. You heard me on the last show saying that if this issue was litigated at the ballot box, then it will hurt them. But there are other issues that are hurting Mr. Cummings right now, and that is that his collaborators are saying he doesn't have a political base. And by that, they mean that he doesn't really point to a geographic region to say, because Liberian politics is very tribal. It's it can be regional as well. So where does Mr. Cummings point to as his political base? I know one time he tried to address this issue. He mentioned, the Yana boys, this trade group and this and that. They are my, base. But that's not how Liberian politics operate. So Mr. Cummings has no base. So he came to the CPP for benefits, quite frankly, for political benefits. He could have gone to other political parties, as Anthony suggested. But what are the benefits? Mr. Cummings is a very smart man, so he understands that in the CPP is where you will gain the most benefits, and that's why he's in the CPP, in my opinion. And another thing I want to point out is Mr. Cummings. Reason why I'm tremendously disappointed in Mr. Cummings is because he came from the private sector, from the United States, from the vicious, Fortune 500 back with with that background. How vicious this, this private sector can be. So if this were, Coca-Cola, if something happened, he's the director, executive director, whatever they call it. If something had happened in Coca-Cola, Mr. Cummings is not going to sit for a week and then have a press conference. A statement will go out right away. They will get in front of this. If there is an apology to be made, then, if you have to own up to it, then own up to it, apologize, and move on if you can move on.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, I would submit to you that Mr. Cummings, this right now does not look good for him at all. Even though he has pushed back, but it doesn't look good. And something that Anthony also mentioned, that he should have bought into a comparison with good companies versus bad companies. No, in the American economic, in the American private, in the private sector, uh, you know, these investors are not looking for good or bad. They're looking to make profits. So Mr. Cummings brought that background to the Liberian, political scene, brought that background to Liberian politics, and it's not working well for him. So right now, what you have is that, we have a very, very tenuous situation. We also have a bad situation because you don't have an alternative. So where do we go from here? Where we go from here is George Weah, whose government is very, very corrupt. George Weah, who has proven incapable of running the Liberian Republic, is can, if his people around him were smart, they can now begin to peel off this opposition. They can now begin to buy these this malcontented opposition members if they choose to, because they have a largesse, they have a large stash of money that they can, of resources that they can invest into, that they can tap into to start to buy all these opposition members. So George Weah can do that. George Weah also have the means to begin to campaign in the different counties while the CPP is sitting in Monrovia, bickering among themselves. So this right now, to your question, Dennis, where do we go? Advantage CPP. I'm sorry, Advantage CDC. But the one thing I can tell you is that George Weah at this time is very unpopular. If it wasn't for his unpopularity, I would say that this will be a clean sweep for the CDC. But I'm not ready to concede that to the CDC. I think there's some fight left in those who are left in the political opposition. Mr. Boyka has a very good shot at the presidency. So let's keep that in mind as we go into 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. And let's be brief. We're almost out of time here. Mr. Cooney, where do we go from here? What next? CPP, according to you, is dead. Second term, one round theory loading?
Oh, absolutely. The one round theory is loading. What we have here, as I said, is not a competition of ideas. It's not a competition of plans to change the lives of the Liberian people. And the opposition is not contributing anything, not policy, not specific actions that will contribute to changing the lives of the Liberian people. Let me tell you something that the former president did early that is worth mentioning. Many people who know me know that I'm not a fan of Ellen. But the president visited the Monrovia City Hall today, or maybe yesterday, and she went there with specific recommendations and suggestions to improve the cleanliness of the city. She rejected the negative criticism by the EU that has been embraced by the opposition. And now what the opposition does, whatever the thing is negative is embraced by them in a big way, as if to say it is a strategy. They've not come up with anything to help the Liberian people. I was impressed by what President Salif did. That look, there are things that I've learned and there are things that we can do together, Major Koji, so that we can make our capital city clean. A clean capital city is for everybody. So the opposition has not been able to come to the table. Their preoccupation is just to get George Weah out of the chair. That is not going to work.
That's what opposition do, Mr. Kunin. They get the president out and they take power.
Yeah, but you gotta, you don't just want power for the sake of power. The power should be about a vision that you offer the people. And in the case of the CPP, it's just power for the sake of power. So there is no vision. What are we going to, what the Liberian people are going to take? We're going to take somebody who their own Allah call a criminal? Or are we going to take somebody who their own Allah call an agent of death? Or are we going to take somebody who their own Allah says have enriched himself from many years of government service? But why they worry with that? Why they bicker among themselves? I'm encouraged by the fact that President George Manneh Weah, contrary to what the opposition believe, is advancing his agenda. He's engaging in developing the infrastructure of the country, connecting roads to people, people to services. He's carrying on his rural housing program, taking low-cost housing for the first time from Monrovia to the rural counties. He's pursuing the rural electrification strategy, carrying solar panel light, which the opposition, their only prayer is that the rain should come so much so that I don't like and spoil. The Liberian people are saying that. He's building roads. The opposition is praying when he builds the road, the rain must be so massive so that those roads can be, destroyed. That's not who does that to their country? So they can bicker while the president is working. And the Liberian people will have, when the time comes, they will make that determination as to where they want to go. But from where we sit, the first round is definitely loading. There will be a massive victory for the CDC at the polls come 2023. And my only advice to the president of the Republic of Liberia is for him to continue to work for the Liberian people. There is no campaign that is important than doing things that change the lives of the Liberian people. If the president continue on that path, it is not only the bickering that will kill the CPP, it will be because the Liberian people appreciate what this president has been doing. And my brother here can continue to say Georgia is unpopular. I don't know of any unpopular person whose birthday will be so packed that send a panic to the entire republic. And everybody is showing this appreciation and the love for the president. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not facing challenges in our country. There are difficult times in our country. There are things that are very, very difficult in our country. But if people understand the president is making his effort, the opposition, all they do is criticize. We give people free tuition to public colleges.
Thank you, Mr. Kone.
They just criticize. Now, they are
we have 4 minutes to close.
The opposition is taking 4 years. 4 years to draft, to come to agreement on a single document. That is very telling for the Liberian people. And I see it's no brainer that they will be rejected at the polls. And George Weah will be re-elected on a first round victory.
Dennis, if I may quickly, let me debunk this fake one-round theory. This CDC intelligentsia elite continue to propagate on this platform. In 2005, Mr. George Weah was so popular and his love was in the roof. he did not win a first round victory. 2011 will come. He was on a ticket with a popular United Nations Secretary General to one of these countries. I don't remember the country, Winston Tubman. So these were two popular individuals, an internationalist and an international football icon who was loved by his people. Yet they got dragged by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. 2017 will come. He was still popular. This guy could not win first round victory. So I don't know where Mr. Cooney is coming off with this. This is just a CDC narrative. He's pandering. It's not going to work. Quickly here. Now, there are others that continue to say Ellis Cummings is desperate. To those who continue to say that, they are wrong. What you call desperation? As a Liberian, it is his right to contest in his country, to run for the highest office. That is why he has chosen to do. He is making the necessary effort. I have my own quarrel with Alex and also his political party for the decisions they are making. But to say that Mr. Cummings is desperate, I don't know what people are talking about. What you call desperation? I wish we could have more Liberians like Alex Cummings going to Liberia to challenge the status quo. Maybe we'll be in a better place. I just want to nail that quickly. Also, Dennis, the way forward for the CPP, I said it, and it's simple. I'll give three options for them. Option number one, put this mess behind you, go with a single ticket. When you decide your ticket, be a Bwaka on a ticket or Manus Bwaka, Cummings, and somebody who is younger, and then you reach out to other opposition political party, enlarge the tent, you are sure of victory. Why? Liberians are hurting. The country is bad. A roasted piece of corn right now is around $150 Liberian dollars. The prices of basic commodities in the country, they are so high. People are dying. Ritualistic killing is on the increase. Liberia has never been in economic mess in its lifetime than what we are witnessing in the hands of this pro president he called himself. The people that show up to the birthday that Mr. Cooney are talking about, these are hungry youth who wanted to get something to eat because they've been subjected to misery and hunger. For you to say that is a translation of them trying to heal a man who has subjected them to nothing but poverty, it's a mystery. To close, option number two for the opposition, go your separate way, adapt a resolution that whoever makes it to the second round becomes your candidate. The rest of the constituent member endorse that person, you stand a chance. Where is vulnerable. But if you divide yourself, and the last option is Alice Cummings, pull out, bear your own collaboration. That is what Ellen Johnson Sirleaf did. Let me forget about the corporate one. Ellen put three parties together from my understanding, and that's how she succeeded. You can do that. You can pull out of this mess called CPP, bear your own collaboration, and you can make it to the second round. And then you can solidify your chances after the first round to go and beat Joshua. That is an option for you. If you don't want to take it, that's it. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. That leads us to our last segment, which is Tabata. Comes to you right after this.
It's too late, baby, go to bed. I don't need your Tabata. Baby, oh, your Tabata. I'm gonna go away, your Tabata. My baby, oh, I don't need your Tabata. My baby, oh. Baby, I'm tired, I don't need your Tabata. Baby, oh, your Tabata. I'm gonna go away, your Tabata. My baby, oh, I don't need your Tabata.
That is the song that introduces our segment, Tabata. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been with us, we always discuss this one, which is the Tabata of the week. And let me start with Mr. Sharif.
Yes. So my Tabata of the week is Alexander Benedict Cummings. Mr. Cummings held a press conference, I believe it was Monday, and he immediately introduced his wife. Now, this week, I'm leaving the CDC alone now this week, so maybe next week we'll come back to some CDC people. So this is Mr. Cummings. He goes to the press conference, he talks about. So he talks about his wife, who was there, and I believe she was there, and by his own admission, in a way, as a character reference. And who knows him better than his wife? So he goes to through this press conference, reads his prepared text, but the wife says nothing. You brought her for a reason. So this is the political season. She should have at least done the introduction, but she sits there, says nothing. And you read this, and there was no question. So he goes through all of this, and that was the end of it. She says nothing. What is the point? That's my tabata of the week.
Mr. Cooney.
Well, before I say my tabata, I just want to say that Miss my sister, Miss Famula, she's not here to pronounce, the tabata. I wish you were here tonight so she could pronounce it for us again. But my tabata for the week, really, then is in a serious way, is for individuals with very shady character, questionable character, individuals whose character cannot even pass muster, for them to pile on Mr. Alexander B. Cummings, calling him the worst name that anybody can dream about because of a document that I think all of them are very complacent and not even playing leadership role on. If every leader of the CPP was as vigilant and everything, I don't see how one person could even alter a document, and on the basis for people that we know with very shady character, to look at one of Liberia's most achieved international businessmen, to call him words like criminal. That's the greatest for people with criminal appearance to call. Seriously, I don't really know. I don't even know how to put it. For people who have been thieves all their lives, to look at Alexander Cummings and call him criminal, that's the greatest tabata that I've ever seen this whole time.
Mr. C.A.
Then I will go a week back, and I think this will make or is my tabata of the week and the tabata of the month. The president's birthday. Maybe people will get tired with me talking about it. Then that is the tabata of the century. For President Weah to nationalize his birthday and take it to his party's headquarters and examine his government officials to come and worship him. Come to think about the cake. They took our country's flag and they placed it on a gigantic cake for President George Weah because it was his birthday. My younger brother is in Liberia as we speak. He said there are posters of the president along the streets of Monrovia. This is our president. When Obama was president, I was here. Kunika tell me he saw a birthday celebration of Obama being nationalized and taken to the Democratic Party national headquarters. Trump, as we know him to be, could not even celebrate his birthday as the Republican headquarters.
Mr. C.A., be brief. It's just a Tabata movement.
Yes, so let me just be brief. So then I think that Tabata exhibited by our president will go in the Guinness Book of Record as the Tabata of the century. Thank you.
Thank you. My Tabata of the week is a piece of garbage that came from our Minister of Justice, instructing, if that really came from him, instructing the foreign ministry or or the foreign minister to issue visa to all Liberians, regardless whether they took on another citizenship or not, citing the Supreme Court case that had nothing to do with what he's saying. Supreme Court, when Jallo went to the Supreme Court, the ruling was you cannot tell anyone that they are no longer Liberian unless you give them due process. So, but the alien and nationality law is still there that stopped those who took on other nationals from becoming the citizens of Liberia. And that was the purpose. That was the purpose of the referendum, which was defeated. How dare you come out and say give a passport to everybody? To me, and people celebrating that, to me, that's the greatest tabata I can see from.
That's another CDC achievement. Mr. Cooney is celebrating that as well.
And the other tabata I want to touch is because as soon as he didn't eat a birthday cake, so he's so angry about it. That's a sad bad tabata I see for this whole.
Thank you. So this Sunday we're going to have Sunday Got the Ball on primetime. Sunday is coming on 6 o'clock. The men's Sunday, the music and the Liberian Society. You don't want to miss it. On Saturday we have Team Gonglo. They will be here with me so that we can quiz them. Is Team Gonglo coming because now the CPP is imploding? Then on Sunday also we'll have the former General Butt Naked, now Evangelist Joshua Blai. He's going to be here. He's going to be here to talk about his former life, the TROC report and war crimes court, his take on national issues, especially ritualistic killings. Also, we're going to have on Sunday the CPP and the CDC 2023 matchup. Robert Monsiokpada, the leader of the One People Revolutionary Movement, will be here with the political bulldog, Mr. Ansoni Sie. Gentlemen, that's how we want to end it tonight. I want to thank you all for coming. And before I close, I had one tabata here coming from okay, Samuel said, my tabata of the week will be the coincidental letters from Cummins and Belete stating that they won't be attending the CPP's handover ceremony to GNB. What a coincidence. I want to thank all our viewers tonight and thank all of you also for watching, even those who will watch later. Thank you, panelists. We'll just use 30 seconds for your closing remark. Let me start with Mr. Cooney. 30 seconds, please.
Well, the scenario unfolding in the CPP is just a reflection of the failure of the intelligentsia elite that has plagued our country for decades of misrule. I'm happy that the Liberian people are witness to this failure, and they will have the opportunity and the ability to, at this time, not rationalize for them, not apologize for them, but take decisive political action against them by voting against them.
Thank you. Mr. Sear.
Dennis, the CPP for sure is dead, politically speaking. I don't see how, because the thing, it was not well thought of from the get-go. They didn't tell us, they didn't lay out the democratic processes through which they will have selected their candidates. As we speak, the CPP is not running on any plan. The CPP does not have a plan. The CPP does not have a website. Even when Alice Cummings was there, the CPP, the man from corporate America, who was part of a company that had a website. Every company was part of had a website. He was head of the CPP, no website. Maybe Bwaka will give them website. We hope that happens. So to conclude, this is the sad story of our country. We hope that they can get it together. If they can't hold, let them go their separate way. Let go to election. Let Liberian people decide. Thank you.
Mr. Sharif?
Dennis, in politics, there are times that you put aside political differences to work in the interest of the nation. It's called patriotism. That's why Ellen Johnson certainly showed by going to City Hall to talk to the city mayor of Monrovia, Jefferson Kwiji. If this were George Weah, he won't do it because he refused assistance from Dubanyan, from Dr. Dubanyan. So Ellen has shown political maturity once again. real quick. George Weah's roots are in the Southeast. But right now, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to travel from Monrovia to Harper. The roads are miserable. It's bad. So in the midst of all this devastation and degradation, so you have a president who is celebrating a birthday, and his there are posters all over Monrovia. You saw at City Hall as Ellen was visiting, you have a big plaque of George Weah. So where are we going with all of this? This is really not good for Liberia. So instead of this country rising as a shining symbol of the black man's ability to govern himself or govern themselves, Liberia now, sadly, it's a tragic African story, and this is really, really sad. And in the midst of all of this, the opposition does not seem to show to us that they are a better alternative.
Thank you. On that note, I want to say thank you also for watching. Indeed, the CPP has imploded, and it is at this point that my panelists are predicting, and I agree with them, that the CPP, as we know it, is dead. What does that mean for 2023 for the opposition bloc and for George Weah, who is performing poorly, but yet, is that what we have? Until then, my name is Dennis Jar, closing on behalf of Focus on Liberia. Good night and God bless you.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Liberia.